Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video briefing for the Museum Estate and Development Fund Round 6. This briefing includes British Sign Language, VSL interpretation, and automated captions which are visible on screen. We have shared a copy of these slides and transcript on the MEND webpage. This is the second of two briefings about the Museum Estate and Development Fund Round 6. The first was an introduction to the fund and a guide on how to complete the expression of interest. This one will focus on the application form and getting it right. In this video, we will discuss the aims of the fund, timeline and budget, application form, REBA Work Stage 3, mandatory attachments, Historic England advice meetings, balancing criteria and decision making, security requirements and support. We will focus mainly on the application form and attachments to help you make the strongest application possible. There are two main impacts we expect to see from this investment. Firstly, museums who are awarded a MEND grant will improve their core infrastructure by tackling their maintenance backlogs. Secondly, museums who are awarded a MEND grant will reduce the immediate risk to buildings, visitors, staff and collections due to improved core infrastructure. In terms of outcomes, there are a few things we expect to see from recipients of this investment. Museums will become more financially resilient and environmentally responsible by developing and implementing maintenance plans. The environmental performance of buildings and equipment will be improved, supporting the reduction in carbon emissions in the museum sector. Museums' ability to offer independent access for disabled people and accommodation for diverse user needs will be improved. Museums will have strengthened their contribution to the local community and regeneration by preserving landmark buildings and ensuring locally treasured collections are accessible to the public. Here is a brief recap of the timeline. The portal for expressions of interest opened on the grant system on the 18th of May and closed on 12th of June. We received 85 expressions of interest, and we will invite up to 50 to submit a full application. The portal for full applications opened on the grant system at 9 AM on the 29th of June. The deadline for full applications is Friday, 12 PM or midday on the 4th of September 2026. Applicants will receive their decisions on their applications by March 2027. There is £25.25 million available for this round, and we are expecting to assess 50 applications. Reduced offers may be made, i.e. grants for less than applied for, to allow us to get to the maximum value from the available budget and support as many museums as possible. Please present how your project could be split into phases of activity if relevant, and ensure cost plans clearly show how costs are calculated for each element of the project. Demand will be greater than we are able to fund. If the project phasing information isn't clear, then if you are offered a reduced award, we will have to make the calculations based on the information given, and you may find that it does not match what you were expecting. Moving on to the application form. The full guidance, including fully accessible formats, can be found on our website. The applicant guidance contains details about each section of the application form. Follow the information in the guidance and on the grant system, ensuring you answer all the questions asked. The form is made up of the following sections: basic details, listing status, finance, income and expenditure, location, lenders and ownership of land and buildings. You will need to provide the museum address where the works will take place, and you will need to be able to demonstrate that you own the land and/or buildings as either a freehold or a leasehold on which you will spend your grant, and that the land and buildings can be used for the project purposes. This means if you are managing the building only, but are not the freeholder or the leaseholder, you cannot apply. size of building, statutory approvals, for example, listed building consent, design development. You will need to confirm your project is developed up to and including REBA Work Stage 3, and display energy certificates and sustainable technologies. This is for grants of over £500,000 only. And finally, a top tip: assume we know nothing about you. We will consider only the information provided in your application and attachments in our assessments. Don't leave out key information about your organisation or project because we have worked with you before. Tell us everything we need to know. You will also provide a written proposal as part of the application form. You should write a narrative for each of the following sections, as detailed in the How to Apply part of the guidance. Use the prompts to fully structure your response. There are also assessor prompts in the How Decisions Are Made section of the guidance. This will give you more detail about the information we are looking for and how these narrative sections are used to assess your application. Make sure you take full advantage of each of these parts of the guidance. A little more detail about each section. Meeting the brief. Describe the project you are asking us to support and how it meets the fund's aims, impacts, and outcomes. This should include, but is not limited to, describing the work, the urgency of the work, and how carrying out the work will improve the safety of the collection, visitor experience of the museum, and comfort of the public, staff, and building users. Governance and management of the activity. Set out your governance and management plans, demonstrating that you have appropriate plans for managing your project, including risks. This should include, but is not limited to, project management plans and previous experience, risk management, procurement that is in line with regulation, statutory consents and advice, timetable and sequence of works. Financial viability. Tell us about your work to assess the project cost, including plans for raising contingency planning. You should also demonstrate that you have considered the financial impact on your organisation during and after the project is completed. This should include, but is not limited to, the professional advice sought and how you have calculated your budget, inflation, and financial planning for maintaining capital assets. Plans for architectural and engineering elements must be developed up to and including REBA Work Stage 3 as a minimum at the point of application on the 4th of September, i.e. you must have completed REBA Work Stage 3. If you are not following REBA Work Stages, plans should be developed to the equivalent of completing REBA Work Stage 3. This is an eligibility requirement for MEND. REBA Work Stage 3 is fundamentally about testing and validating the work done on the project so far, to make sure that the architectural and engineering information prepared at Stage 2 is spatially coordinated before the detailed information required to purchase materials and procure services is produced at Stage 4. This stage is called spatial coordination. As the name suggests, this means that the space in which you want to do the work has been measured, as well as defining the actual work that you want to carry out. Your design drawings should show where everything will go. We ask projects to have completed REBA Work Stage 3 by the full application submission because your costs are more accurate, you will have submitted or will be ready to submit applications for statutory consents, your project scope will be established and associated technical drawings and specifications developed to an appropriate point to assess. Your project team is in place and/or you will have taken appropriate professional advice to date. All of these factors reduce delays and other risks to project delivery. You can find more about REBA Stage 3 in the REBA Plan of Work on the REBA website and the Arts Council Capital page on our website. We will now discuss the mandatory attachments. This programme requires applicants to submit a significant number of attachments. We will run through some of the key attachments that have previously raised issues during the assessment process. You can also find more information in the applicant guidance. It is worth noting that the majority of these documents should be produced by the professionals you are working with. However, we want to make sure that applicants understand what we need from them so that you can have these conversations with your team. The mandatory attachments are cash flow, cost plan, costed conditions survey, design specifications, financial statements, project management structure, partnership funding evidence or fundraising plan, costed risk register, and timetable. Please use our template for your cash flow, adding lines in as necessary. You will be able to download the template from the grant system when you access the full application portal. Your cash flow must include both income and expenditure, with budget lines and their descriptions broken down into sufficient detail for us to understand the finances of your project. Our grant should be included following the guidance on payment splits in the Managing Your Grant section of the guidance, and your cash flow should align with the figures included in the income and expenditure tables in your application form on the grant system. Cost plan. Your cost plan should be based on the drawings produced at REBA Work Stage 3 and not earlier, and this is to provide cost certainty. It is good practice to include overview costs, elemental costs, assumptions and exclusions, risk costing, and a final project cost plan. As you progress through your project and REBA work stages, the cost plan should be updated to reflect the latest information. Your cost plan should also reflect the figures in your costed condition survey and be using them as a basis. We strongly advise all applicants to seek professional advice in relation to inflation. Arts Council England will not increase grants once awarded, so if inflationary increases mean that applicants do not have enough funds to complete their project, you will need to source additional funding elsewhere to complete the work outlined in the grant agreement. It is not possible to reduce the scope of works post-award due to rising inflation. Please see our terms and conditions for more information about grant holder obligations under the grant agreement and agreed programme of works. To avoid this issue, we suggest working with your professional team to calculate a realistic future-facing figure for your expenditure. It is important that in your application you show clearly what your inflation figure is and how it has been calculated. Please be aware that inflation should be considered as separate from general contingency and should be represented separately in your application. This will help us to understand your budget and the appropriateness of your figures. You can only apply for activity outlined in your expression of interest. You should not apply for activities that were not detailed in your EOI. We understand that your project planning will be more developed by the time you submit your application, and there may be some slight variance in costs. Inflation may also mean that some costs have increased. To support with your application, you can apply for up to 5% more funding in your application from the amount detailed in your EOI. This cannot be for any items of expenditure that were not included in your EOI, and you cannot exceed the £5 million maximum. It is essential that you provide evidence and demonstrate why the increase in costs has occurred as part of your full application submission. The costed condition survey. A condition survey showing the urgency of proposed work relative to other longer-term repair and maintenance work is key. The survey must have been completed in the last 5 years, with costs updated in the last 12 months. This is to give us confidence in the accuracy of the survey findings. The costs will also go on to inform your cost plan. Your condition survey should be for the whole site, so that we can see which works are the most urgent. And cost should be for the whole site and not just the MEND related works. This should then link directly to the content of your proposed project. The survey needs to have been carried out by an appropriately qualified and competent professional and provide a suitable level of detail. Your survey should answer the following questions. 1. What are the issues? Again, this should be for the whole site and not just the proposed MEND works. 2. What is the level of urgency of each issue? A variety of scales and ratings are used, but this needs to be clear, along with the timescale for works to be carried out. 3. What are the appropriate recommendations? We appreciate that this will be quite brief and subject to further design development. And 4. What are the high-level costs for each of these recommendations? We appreciate that as the project develops, these costs will change, so may not match those in your cost plan. The costs in your cost plan should, however, be using the costed condition survey as a starting point. So the costed condition survey really does need to be up to date. It is helpful when costed condition surveys include a summary of findings, as in the example on the screen, with one line filled in just to give you an idea. Even if your survey does not include a summary table like this, we would expect to find all of this information somewhere within the document. As you can see, the survey example clearly states the location and condition of the building item. In this case, a flat roof over Gallery 1. It shows the recommendation, a photograph reference, the level of priority, and an outline cost. The works listed in this survey have been given priority A, which are the most urgent. So these are the works we would expect to see prioritised in the MEND application. Design specifications. As previously mentioned, your design specification and drawings must have completed REBA Work Stage 3 at the point of application. At this point in the REBA work stages, it should go beyond the initial concept. The work to be done should be visible in the drawings, and we would expect to see a range of views, for example, elevations and sections. The detail in these drawings will inform your cost plan. These will be the drawings that you submit with your statutory approval applications, such as full planning consent and/or listed building consent, and will have been reviewed against current building regulations. The design specification and drawings should be handled by your project specialists. The strongest applications are those that have appointed a design team early on to carry out a survey and develop project proposals in response. We recognise that there are upfront costs, but without it, unfortunately, most projects will not meet the MEND criteria. A conservation accredited lead professional is required for listed buildings of grade 1 or 2 star. The appointment of this team will need to be described in the governance and management of the activity section of the written proposal to show the fair and competitive process. Please remember that you can only apply for the activity outlined in your expression of interest. Completing REBA 3 for building services work, otherwise known as mechanical and engineering or M&E. We want to touch upon requirements here because, in previous rounds, often applicants have not achieved REBA Stage 3 for building services work. One of the main issues in previous rounds has been for projects combining work to both the building fabric and building services. These applications often have not developed one element in sufficient detail, or the application does not demonstrate how the two elements join together. For example, if a museum intends to re-roof one wing of its building and install solar panels, the design of both the new roof coverings and the solar panels must be developed to the same level, REBA Work Stage 3. The key things to remember are to develop a conceptual design to one that is spatially coordinated. Spatial coordination means that the plant rooms, and major M&E services distribution routes are drawn to scale, with height dimensions or elevations and sections provided on the Stage 3 design drawings. Spatial coordination may include utilities and coordinated ceiling voids or risers where applicable, to demonstrate that there are no clashes between the different M&E services and the building structure. The M&E design needs to be developed to a stage where applications can be made for full planning consent and/or listed building consent. This will include any details that could impact the historical significance of the building, for example, buried services in historically sensitive ground, or new routes for pipework through building fabric. The M&E design must outline the strategies for all of the proposed building services and detail any proposed utility connections or alterations should be developed and detailed to include spatial requirements. Costed risk register. Risk registers should be costed as far as possible and thorough. Here is an example of the type of information we want to see. The risk factor, what your mitigations are, some type of scoring system, usually a variation on impact plus likelihood equals total, to show the initial score plus residual score after mitigation, who the risk owner is, and a column for the potential cost impact of each risk. Good cost plans should show construction-related risks, although this will usually exclude other non-construction project-related risks. So ideally, we would want to see these as well. Whether you choose to show these together or separately is up to you, but they should be in there somewhere. There should be clear read across from the costs in your risk register and your contingency costs in your application. Moving on from the mandatory attachments, we will now cover the Historic England Advice Meeting. Historic England, HE, intends to contact applicants who are successful at EOI by email on the 25th or 26th of June to arrange advice meetings. These may be in person on site or may be held virtually via Microsoft Teams. For those applicants whose advice meetings will be managed by the Arts Council, you will be contacted by ACE at this point. Historic England has a team of building professionals, including architects, surveyors, and building services engineers, who will be arranging advice meetings to take place on site or virtually throughout July and very early August. The advice meeting is an opportunity to raise concerns and receive advice on your project. There is no formal assessment at this stage. Historic England will simply be meeting with you to help develop your application and ensure the essential criteria for funding are met. Historic England will focus on how the project's proposed building fabric and services works meet the MEND brief, the governance and management of the project, and the project's financial viability. Before the advice meeting, please send copies of the latest design information you have. This will include drawings of proposals, schemes and specifications, and cost estimates for the work. The more information Historic England can review, the more feedback they can offer. For applications which include building services proposals, Historic England will request copies of the current electrical installation condition report prior to the advice meeting. Where Historic England intends for the advice meeting to take place in person on site, Historic England will request a copy of the site asbestos risk register prior to the meeting. Please ensure that these are provided as quickly as possible. We encourage you to make the most of the visit by ensuring the key members of your project team are available to attend. You might expect the advice meetings to take up to half a day. After the advice meeting period, towards the middle of August, all applicants will receive a written advice report summarising feedback from the Historic England team. They won't be offering further professional advice directly beyond this report, so please bear in mind and ensure all queries are raised on the day at the site visit. For those applicants who will be managed by Arts Council England. You will receive your report from ACE at this point too. So, what happens next? The closing date for applications is the 4th of September at 12 p.m. or midday. Our internal teams will assess each application considering how well each application meets the 3 criteria: meeting the brief, management of the activity, and financial viability. We will make our assessment based on the information you provide in your application and attachments. Any further information that we request, advice provided by Historic England and capital specialists, and where relevant, data from the Charity Commission and Companies House websites relating to your constitution and audited accounts from the past 2 years. We will also use any other information we hold, such as ongoing risk monitoring. Each application will be assessed using a 5-point word scoring from 0 if the criteria is not met, up to 4 if the criteria is outstanding. Applications that do not achieve at least met under all 3 criteria will not be recommended for funding. To ensure that the aims and objectives of the programme are given appropriate consideration, the score for meeting the brief is given a double weighting, i.e. it is out of 8 rather than 4. In addition to the criteria score, applications will also receive a score of 5 if the project benefits a DCMS Culture Priority Place. This is to ensure that funding supports areas of the country that need investment the most. You can find the DCMS Culture Priority Places listed on our website. The Programme Advisory Panel will then review applications and assessments against balancing criteria and provide recommendations to Arts Council England's Executive Board. The criteria are geographic spread. We will consider the need to support museums across England, including with reference to the DCMS Culture Priority Places and Arts Council Priority Places. Risk. The extent of the risks to the overall balance of projects. Type of museum, the range and type of museum such as size, collection type and governance model. And project scale. We will consider the need to achieve a mix of projects of varying grant sizes and delivery timescales within the available budget. Final decisions will be made by the Arts Council England's Executive Board by March 2027. And finally, security requirements. When we make a capital grant, we must ensure that the buildings will be used for the grant purposes for a certain period of time. This means that for grants of over £500,000, we require you to make legal commitments to us to secure the grant purpose. The form these takes depends on the amount of the grant and the type of organisation receiving the grant, and it will be set out in the grant agreement. These will range from a deed of covenant with restriction on title to a fixed and floating charge, together with supporting legal documents relevant to the transaction. These legal commitments will take time and will need to be in place before the release of any grant funding, which may affect your project cash flow and timeline. Please build a realistic amount of time into your planning for legal work to be completed. Here is a reminder of where you can find further information and support. The links on screen can be found in this slide deck, which we have published on our website. Visit the MEND webpage to read the applicant guidance in full, as well as a large print and audio version. We also have a frequently asked questions section, which we will update regularly. And our website also has some useful capital resources to help you prepare and manage your project, including case studies and best practice guides. If you have any questions or if you require access support with your application, you can contact the Capital team directly by email on capital@artscouncil.org.uk. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.